Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Way T Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And today I am pumped because we have someone that is going to talk about some really cool things like bioelectric chemistry, telomeres, and anti-aging. Our guest today is Dr. Darrell Misak, who is a WVU pharmacy graduate who later became a licensed naturopathic doctor after earning his degree at National College of Naturopathic Medicine in 2000. Realizing the pitfalls of traditional medicine and pharmacy, Dr. Misak has been searching for truth in health, which directed him to naturopathic medicine and to explain the truth through his 5-phase optimal health approach. I'm excited to learn more about that. With a goal to teach and change the world, Dr. Misak has been published multiple times in Naturopathic Doctor News and Review, the NDNR, who like abbreviations, performs regular lectures, podcasts, and does YouTube videos teaching an analytical and quantum bioelectric approach of health to optimize personal energy efficiency. And of course, that results in natural health restoration. Dr. Misak, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm excited.
I am too. We had a little chance to catch, to start before here, and you touched on a couple of items that I think is super cool. And that is bioelectric chemistry and anti-aging. Before we get into all that, I would like for you to kind of start, like, how did you get started in this whole field? What attracted to you? And then, you know, that the kind of like this pursuit of truth and how it took you into naturopathic doctor from pharmacy. It's not the most common path here. So what first attracted you to pharmacy, and then what caused you to kind of change courses inside of that in your pursuit to come up with some of these unique ideas, theories, and applications that you put forth?
Well, with my youth at WVU, I could incriminate myself as to why I went into pharmacy. However, life changes, God moves us in many ways and things like that. And then it's that pursuit of truth. But what it is we all have our gifts. And mine is how to take the system apart and figure out how to make it work. You know, so I used to take bicycles apart. I took cars apart. I'm a tinker person. You know, how do things work? You know, and then I just when I went to pharmacy school, the classes that I love were anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, you know, medicinal chemistry, pharmacokinetics. How does it work? You know, and then when I went to, what happened is I graduated, went to Europe on a bicycle for 3 months, came back, started working at Duke Medical Center and clinical oncology and general medicine. And when you see these people dying and all you're doing is picking a drug approach that is going to save the most amount of money for them, that's trying to accomplish something in the lab work, you start watching like, wait a minute, in biochemistry, we learned that in a catabolic state, vitamin C and B vitamins are needed in order for the body to, why can't we give it to these people? You're like, well, there's no research. It's before I had 5 kids. And remember, you had to go to the medical libraries and you had these great big mesh terms and you had to flip through those huge books. No Google. And you flip through those huge books and then you'd find a listing of periodicals where you were looking for particular things. And then you had to go up in the stacks and pull them out and photocopy them. All right.
I do.
So I started pulling out articles about vitamin C and certain B vitamins having these positive effects in cancer states. And they're like, well, this has been refuted. It had never been refuted. But what it did is it led me down that first rabbit hole, you know, and started learning about people like Ralph Moss and the cancer, the cancer diaries and the things that he's worked on, showing natural approaches to how to do the same things with natural medicines. And it just kept, and then I learned about Julian Whitaker and the Whitaker Wellness Institute. And he was like incorporating natural therapies with medical. And he mentioned these naturopathic doctors. I'm like, what the hell are they? And next thing you know, I'm flying out to Oregon and checking out Bastyr and National College and checking the schools out. And it's just like, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I'm move out there for 5 years, went out with one kid, came back with three, and made it through naturopathic medical school, did compounding pharmacy while I was out there. So learning how to make all those hormones and all that other stuff. And that was just another blessing. Moved back towards Pittsburgh because my wife grew up here, had two more kids since we got here, and started a practice a little over 20 years ago. But then the rabbit hole just kept getting bigger, because, what you learn in naturopathic medical school is how to diagnose and how to treat, right? Hey, this is how you break down, you diagnose things, but here's natural approaches to it. Let's look at food sensitivities. Let's look at some of the concepts of natural medicine. But, even naturopathic doctors today are taught to use drugs, first-line therapy to control people before they broaden out. And I kept finding, wait a minute, I'm not seeing the cures that you talk about in Nature Cure. These cancer patients, these autoimmune, I can get them to feel better, but I'm not breaking through with the cures. And that led me down this big rabbit hole that eventually I learned about Dr. Kerry Reams and Reams' biological theory of ionization, that the human body, that instead of taking apart an atom, he's like, how do you put things together? And he learned, like, we are electrical. Einstein said it with theory of relativity, that everything's relative, that energy is the same thing as matter. So energy, or you are heat and electricity, and then, Tesla, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think of frequency and vibration. But nobody teaches health on the level of quantum energy. They all teach it on a cellular concept. So if you look at some of my earlier writings before I wrote about cellular optimization and things like that. But I started learning about this quantum approach, that when you break down the ashes and go back to this planet, you're composed of minerals, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, 85 trace minerals. And the minerals in you dictate your body's ability to generate energy, because how the energy is utilizing. So what we're doing is correcting your soil. And what we're doing is we're measuring the efficiency of how that is going. So Reams teaches you how to do an analytical approach of measuring your urine, looking at sugars, pHs of the urine and the saliva, conductivity of the urine, the cell debris, the turnover, and nitrates that give an idea of protein building versus protein breakdown. And what it does, it creates this picture of where the weaknesses are in the body, where it's going too slow, where it's going too fast, what nutrients are needed in order to correct it, and he had what he did is he figured out a mathematical equation for the line of least resistance, or the most energy efficiency for a human, for biological systems. And so if we know what perfect is, any variable away from perfect, and you know how to modify that variable towards perfect, you improve health. And so that's when I started seeing the miracles, autoimmune conditions, tumors shrinking, weird type of stuff, where we don't treat, cure, prevent, or diagnose. We analyze and we say, hey, you need this, stop this. And it just became a beautiful thing. And now I've written a book and trying to get people and I've written articles in Naturopathic Doctor News and Review, and I'm screaming saying, hey, you got to learn this stuff, man. This is awesome.
I love all of this. And, years ago, I was first introduced to the concept, I think it was way back in 2007. Actually, earlier than that, around 2000, I got exposed to the effects of trace minerals and things like that in health from a guy by the name of Dr. Wallach. Exactly. And I went to a lecture with him. And I was blown away at the amount of information that this guy actually knew. He was just like, it was like a chess master. They were throwing things out and he was explaining it and going, I was like, wow, there's something to it. Years later, I got exposed to all the trace minerals. We actually produced that in our Primergen V and Primergen M. And then I ran into a guy by the name of Dr. Tennant, who said healing is voltage and talking about this. And now this is kind of emerging into kind of work like you're doing, which is explaining, the quantum aspect. And I think we hear this term a lot, quantum.
Mm-hmm.
And we're conditioned in kind of this Newtonian paradigm of causality. A goes to B, B goes to C, C goes to D.
Cause and effect.
Which is primarily what has been the lens from which we view the world, which is allowed for a certain level of predictability in the world. It's why we have the things that we do. But now we see this emergence of the quantum concept, which was pretty much figured out in physics almost 100 years ago, that is really the paradigm that we're operating from. But it has not ripped into the mainstream population. It's starting to emerge in kind of the quote unquote new age, Joe Dispenza kind of things. But as a scientist, as a researcher, as a naturopathic doctor, can you explain to the best way possible for our listeners what you mean by this quantum component involved in healing? Because I think there's a lot of mysticism around there, and I'd like to blow that out from you.
Okay, so I teach a 5-phase approach to health, right? So phase 1 is clean up your environment: pure air, pure food, pure water, EMF protection, lower the load on the body. Phase 2 is test and know what the stressors are on your body, whether they're heavy metals, whether they're foods, get those burdens off the body. Phase 3 is support, where you give your body what it needs and you relatively increase your body's ability to handle a threshold of what it can tolerate because it now has what it needs. And then your phase 4 is detoxification. Your body will naturally detoxify. And phase 5 is self-awareness. Okay. So that's that 5-phase concept. But the reason I bring that into it is natural medicine teaches a total load theory. And the burden is that you can handle this much stress, but when you exceed it, okay, my body can do this, but it can't do this. But this is where most people are focusing because they have so much stress on their body, right? So what you got to do is get below your threshold. So in natural medicine, they teach us as a total load: your mental, emotional, your spiritual, your environmental, your total body burden load. When we exceed the load, our body can't do everything. Carrie Reams explained it this way: the day that you consume more energy than you get from your food is the first day of disease. And that, whoa. Let's put it all in perspective. So now you're talking about food being not just kilocalories and heat forming units, but something is happening here. As the food breaks down, disintegrates, separates, there's an electrical discharge, traditional. And then Carrie Reams, if you look at RBTI and look at the concepts, you can explain all the other concepts that come in and why they work and why they're not working. Reams explained that we have transformer glands, that food breaks down, it gets converted, it goes to transformer glands, it gets converted. Transformer glands throughout the body correlate with acupuncture points. So he connected Eastern and Western medicine. Acupuncture, I use electrodermal testing by electroacupuncture by Voll, because Voll, he was up for a Nobel Prize because the way the story goes is Reinhard Voll, German scientist and physician. He diagnosed with bladder cancer, and if he did traditional therapy, he knew he was a goner. But he was told, hey, you go get acupuncture and they'll get you better. So he went and had acupuncture, got cured of bladder cancer, and then he's like, well, how the hell can that happen with all the science of what we know? So he came up with the genius idea, to measure electrical activity at acupuncture points. You use a little probe, you're measuring galvanic current. And then he identified where how much energy was supposed to be in balance points, and where they're too high, it's yang excess, and where they're low, it's yin, not enough energy. And then he figured out that when you found weakened points, that you could put something into the circuit that would balance them. And then he was curing people. Well, then he became pseudoscience.
Right.
But it's all energy measurements. Same with Royal Rife. Royal Rife running electrical frequencies, finding frequencies specific that would vibrate with microbes. And when that frequency tuned in, the microbe would explode. And they showed that there's pleomorphism, that there's all these microbes that already live in us. That goes back to Enderlein and these other researchers looking at live blood since the 1800s. That's what I got dry blood up behind us on the microscope, you know. And but you can look at blood, you can look at the health of the cells, and based upon the patterns that are there, that means something's happening in the body. You know, so I just kept analytically stepping back. So when you're asking quantum is energy. You know, and so, yes, you can use tuning forks. They are frequencies. Solfeggio frequencies have been shown to have specific effects on the body. Rife is Rife therapy. George Lavotsky, multi-wave oscillator, 98% cure rate with terminal cancers. You know, what happened to his work? You know, there was a guy named Charlie Brown who started making multi-wave oscillators, and the FDA attacked him in the 1980s and said, you can't produce a machine without claiming that there's any contraindications. He won the lawsuit, but he went broke in the process.
I actually have used a multiple wave oscillator and have witnessed firsthand it eliminate scar tissue in front of my eyes. People who had scars and used the multiple waves, and it's the big wooden box in the case, and it's just crazy device. And
I have one in the back.
It is absolutely it's mind bending. It totally distorts what you believe is possible based on the information, and you start to realize how paradigm blindness. And there's a thing called the reticular activating system is that, for example, if you go out and buy a brand new red Volkswagen SUV, you notice every single Volkswagen SUV, and especially the red ones. Yeah. And because we have so much information. So part of the programming that's been involved, particularly in the West, around pharmaceutical medications, the treatment of disease through, you know, attacking the problem as opposed to looking to the source cause.
To make the body work. Right.
Correct. And so if I heard you correctly, you saw that, you became an expert in that model, realized its limitations, came around, found these kind of truths. Look at the historical aspects of how people who have made breakthroughs in this area have largely in part ran into a lot of trouble from the special interest groups who that's disrupting their business model, yet have continued on to kind of share this information. And I love that quick illustration that you had. And I thought was really interesting is that you talked about filling up before you detoxified.
Yeah, you totally. Well, what happened is I had two clients come in today, and they were both on their, one was on their second follow-up, one was on their first. And what happens is as you start supporting the body and it starts generating more energy, the body says, okay, why am I dealing with all this crap on a cellular level that now that I have the energy to deal with it with where I don't, you know, I'm generating more energy than I need. Let's get rid of this burdens. So the drain opens up, you know, and so you start to naturally, and I'm like, you're detoxifying. She's like, she's like, I feel good, but not as good as I felt on the first follow-up. I'm like, because you're detoxifying. Now's when your chemistry is showing this support, and we need to support it here. But this is when you get in the sauna. This is when because now your chemistry can handle the detox. Right. You have no clue how many people before I understood this chemistry stuff, where I'd have people come doing infrared sauna, ionic bath, colonics, and then they're like, I was in the hospital this weekend. I was having these incredible pains and blah, 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 because they were detoxing, but their chemistry couldn't handle it because they didn't have what they needed in order to handle the detox, but they kept telling their body to detox. When you understand these concepts of monitoring the urine and saliva, you know, now it's time. Support your body, move through it, you know? So the whole quantum aspect, you know, is how do I generate more energy from my food? By choosing the food choices that are that either speed up your chemistry or slow it down. So like everybody in natural medicine, we learn this concept of the vital force. You ever heard that?
Yeah, I wrote a book called Vital Power.
Yeah.
It was originally, I think it's been called the Elan Vital, Chi, Prana,
Okay.
all these different terminologies. But it's the difference between the living and the dead, the energized and the de-energized, the vitality, which we all recognize within anybody. Like, for example, we see somebody that's they're radiant and healthy. We see someone that's sick, they look like they're dark and down. And we even use it into our language. I'd like for you to expand on that for us.
Well, in natural medicine, they kind of teach the concept that that you have this inherent vital force, right? And then some people just have these great vital force. They can live a crappy lifestyle and still live a long life because they have this strong vital force. And they say other people have a weak vital force, but if they live a really healthy lifestyle, they can still live that long life because they're supporting their vital force. And what I teach is how to modulate and measure the vital force by looking at the energy efficiency.
Oh, that's so cool. So how do you do that? How do you
urine and saliva testing? The urine, the bricks is the refractometer. It tells you the sugar regulation. And so when sugars parallel with oxygen availability. If your sugars are too low, oh my God, I can't think. I'm falling asleep. And give me something to eat right now. Sugar crashing sucks, And so, but if your sugars are high, like diabetics, I'm foggy brained. I can't think because the sugars start displacing the oxygen. So you learn what to drink. Am I drinking enough water to maintain my sugars, or am I drinking too much to flush them out? Okay. Or am I eating foods that spike up my sugars that I shouldn't be eating? So you learn by what foods are good for me and if I'm drinking enough water. pH is a measure of resistance. So Reams explained that the more resistance, the slower things go. Makes sense, right?
Love it.
So the higher the pH, the slower things go. So people who say you need to be alkaline, and get your pH of around 7, well, you're not going to poop. Things are going to slow down. You're going to get congested. You're going to see sinus conditions. You're going to see thyroid conditions. You're going to see upper body issues. Reams showed that biologically at a pH of 6.4, right, that you have your electrochemically, your body can flip between anionic or cationic, which can be a right spin or a left spin based upon the energy. So when you're cationic and acidic, you're spinning left. When you're anionic, you're spinning right. And so what's interesting is what makes up about 80% of our body: water. Hydrogen and oxygen are isotopes, meaning that they can spin based upon the environment. It makes sense electrochemically. So Reams taught that it's all electrochemical on the frequency, and the urine dictates the frequency of where you're at. So you learn based upon your urine frequency, tells a post-digestion of how well your body is processing things and whether you need to eat foods that bring your pH up to slow things down, or eat foods that speed it up. And we do that based upon what prominent calciums are in those foods. And then that the saliva is giving you an idea of your bile strength. And it gives you an idea of, do I have a good digestive capacity? And when it gets too low, the liver's on fire, and you'll see abnormal liver function tests and really weak bile. When it gets too high, it's slowing down because the liver's getting congested. Okay, so and then conductivity gives you an idea of salts, and your sugar to salt ratio shouldn't be over 1:5. And that's why I tell people stay away from sea salt. Most people are like, oh, it's great, trace minerals and everything else, and it helps your adrenals. Yeah, it stimulates cortisol, but it's going to cause an adrenal burnout because high conductivity is like electrostatic energy, and it causes it's like a static in you. You get nervous and anxious, and you're on edge, and you get numbness and tingling in your hands, and women will cough and sneeze and lose urine, and so we try to control that conductivity, and it dictates the thickness of your body fluids. When your salts go up, your fluids get thick, your blood agglutinates, you can't carry oxygen very well. So you see cholesterol go up, and you see more stress on the liver. So you see the saliva pH go up, and all these number of variables, they work together. Cell debris, we look at the amount of cells coming out in the urine to make sure that you have a healthy cell turnover, because your body isn't into repairing cells, it's into replacing them. Let's get rid of the crap and put good 100% energy efficient cells back in. And as they become less than energy efficient, let's kick them out. And that's kind of what, so we want to make sure that the body's getting rid of the bad cells. Then we look at nitrates, nitrates, and ammonia nitrates. Ammonia nitrates are toxic and a sign that you're not breaking down proteins. Whereas nitrates are used for building blocks for healthy cells, which should always be higher. So you're looking at protein efficiency on whether the body's breaking down your proteins to be able to use it to make healthy cells, or if it's not breaking down, you're going to see putrefaction, overgrowth of yeast and parasites in the gut and stuff like that. So it just gives you this picture that says, hey, this is what's going on. This is where you need support, and where you are efficiently wise. So that's how we monitor it. Just home, you could do it at home.
This is what I love, people that are presenting, and I love how clear you are about the steps and the modulations, both up and down, depending on where a person is, and this 5-step approach that you're talking about. And so just to unpack that a little bit further so that we're clear for our listeners on the terminology that you illustrated earlier called bioelectric chemistry.
Yes.
And so what is that as you would define it, and how would you say the bioelectric impacts the chemistry, or because it seems like you just explained an upregulation and a downregulation.
Right.
So if you can say that.
Here,
yeah.
So I can have people come in here, run their numbers, and then I don't even look at why they came, but I could tell them everything that's going on with them by looking at their set of numbers, because each variable where it's away from normal has a symptom pattern presented with it. So chemistry is what makes up everything, right? So you have positive charges and negative charges, anions and cations, right? And then they make up, electrically, they make up your atoms, right? And then your atoms make up molecules, right? So if you understand that the chemistry is dictating what happens everywhere down the line, and you know what the ideal is with the chemistry, as you start correcting the chemistry, electrochemically, everything starts to fix down below. You start seeing hormonal effects start normalizing. You start seeing blood pressure. You start all these cellular concepts. You got to support the liver. You got to support the pancreas. You got to support the lungs, or whatever it is, the adrenals and the thyroid. Those things start to fix themselves, but the chemistry will tell you where the weaknesses are and what you need to provide the support for.
Fascinating. Really, really cool information, and so concise. So when you're looking at someone's like, oh, you know what? I've never heard of this. This is really cool. What should I do based on the paradigm that you're explaining if I want to live my healthiest life or overcome a debilitating condition? What would be the strategy that you would employ?
What I do, I tell people to at least start with getting a refractometer and some pH strips, and then learn their patterns. Every time you pee, check your refractometer reading and check your urine and saliva pH, and learn what the patterns are doing. Because certain people in the evenings, they change and they go up, or other people in the evenings, they go down. So when they go this direction, hey, you need to drink more water at this time of day, or you need to eat these kind of foods at this time of day. So what it is, when you're talking about individualized diet, I'm talking about individualized diet based upon how your body is reacting, because everybody's rhythm's different based upon the rhythm that you're creating for yourself of when you're waking up, what you're exposed to, and whatever else. And so what you're doing is you're taking a measurement and you're looking at this measurement and saying, wow, at this time of day when I'm with all these computers around me, this is what my chemistry is doing. And I'd say, okay, so you should eat these foods, drink more water, and make sure you're taking this supplement to move it in the right direction to help you handle that stress. In the meantime, let's talk about shungite, and let's talk about some things that'll neutralize some of this EMF that's around you. Let's talk about sacred geometry things that you can do, and different type of possible crystalline structures, selenite, and I've got crystals all around my office, because it's all energy. I went there. There's this incredible rock shop up in north of Harmony, PA, called the Appalachian Rock Shop. And there's this quantum physicist that works there. I'm like, I want you on my show. She's this retired quantum physicist that works in a rock shop. And she's like, yeah, we did this thing over here where we put all of this shungite with quartz around it, and we could measure it 2 farms down with electrical equipment, how much energy was coming from our building. I'm like, it blows you away, And so it's all energy.
And this is something I think that is really important because, a lot of people within the medical paradigm will say all that stuff is woo as in not measurable, but it is measurable. And there's all kinds of people that have done that information. And I feel it is a disservice to the consumer, the person that is trusting those authorities. And I've always shared with people who are going to their professional, and I say, well, bring the information to educate your researcher. And if they're not open to it, you're a practitioner, then go talk to somebody else. Mm-hmm. Because that person has already shut down what they're willing to know, and nobody knows everything.
They're stuck in their box.
They're stuck in their box for whatever reason. And oftentimes when you're dealing with a serious challenge, you need someone that is confident that they can, if they have a box and they've given you a set of dictates, and that's not the ones you want, you need to get another opinion, because we know what the result is that's going to be. And it's essentially voodoo. I mean, voodoo, I think Dr. Maxwell Maltz talked about owning the bone. And the voodoo doctor would point at someone and that would be it. And the person would die on the spot because everybody believed in this whole thing. And this, like, it was so strong that literally shut the person down. That's how powerful beliefs are.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so many of us are with limiting beliefs. What was, before we get into this product that you've developed in around anti-aging and stuff, what was it like for you when you kind of escaped the paradigm you learned as a pharmacist and moved into this new paradigm? Was that what was that like, and what was your experience as a professional and then as a practitioner?
The Bioptimizer mission is to help more of the world fix their digestion at a core level. The truth is, your digestion is only as good as your enzyme levels. Imagine trying to build a house with a tree. It's impossible. You need to chop the tree down into small pieces. Similarly, in order for your food to be used by your body, it must be broken down into a bioavailable form. And that's what enzymes do, converting protein into amino acids, fats into specific fatty acids, and carbohydrates into usable energy units. We start out with an abundance of enzymes, and that's why kids can digest just about anything really quickly. The thing is cooking food kills enzymes, as they cannot survive at temperatures above 118 degrees. So years of this ends up depleting our bodies and leads to weak digestion. Taking digestive enzymes like Mazymes, which has an incredibly high level of protease for digesting protein, as well as other critical enzymes like lipase, amylase, and others, is a total game changer. Suddenly, you strengthen your digestion, eliminate gas and bloating, boost metabolism, and multiply your energy. Most importantly, you fix your digestion at a core level. To get started with Mazymes and to save 10% on your first order, go to Mazymes.com. That's MASSZYMES.com and use the code MASS10, MASS10.
Going from pharmacy to naturopathic medicine was a no-brainer for somebody who looks at how things work.
Right.
Because from a pharmacist standpoint, I'm like, all we're doing is we're modifying chemically how the body's reacting, but we're not supporting the mechanisms that are already there. So the transition to naturopathic medicine was a no-brainer for me. But what happened was where you learn these traditional techniques of what they call the nature cure, testing people for food sensitivities, looking for heavy metals, looking to support the organ systems and optimizing organ performance, and not seeing the results of nature cure. I can make a cancer patient feel better, but they're still dying. You know what I mean? Those type of things. That really bothered me. And so I kept looking. And when I switched over to testing people in the chemistry, it near put me out of business because, you go in and you're like, oh, you need fish oils and you need some CoQ10 and you should be taking, all of the collagen. And if you just do those three things right there, there's $110 a month. Keep buying it from me, And so yet alone, you need a multivitamin and let's give you some liver support. So next thing you know, you go to a naturopath and you come home with all these great supportive things to support these organ systems. And you have these generalized programs that you put almost everybody on because you need liver support and healthy cellular metabolism and energy performance and carnitine, these expensive nutrients. And if you have clients who can afford $300 to $400 a month, great, But when I went to when doing this, people walk out of my office and sometimes they're buying less than $100 worth of supplements. Minerals are cheap. Basic vitamins are cheap. My sales went like, boom. I near put myself out of business when I switched to testing people's chemistry, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And what happened was people were like, oh my God, go see this guy. And I don't even have to advertise because everybody tells their friends and it's just continually, I get referral. And I don't, and I have people who find me on YouTube. I had somebody drive 6 hours from Michigan yesterday to come and see me. And I send them home and they're just like, they want to buy, how do I test? Then they can go home, they can run their own test numbers, and then they can do phone consults by sending me where their numbers are. But that transition of knowing that it was the right thing to do, but watching that bank account to where, oh my God, am I even going to be able to pay rent? I fell as many as 4 months behind on rent back in those days.
Wow. That's commitment.
And I'm just like, but this is right because what I was seeing happen was like nothing I'd ever seen. I was watching people restore, not just feel better.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was understanding what was happening by looking at those numbers. Like, oh, they're detoxing. And look, when they get the headaches, this is what the numbers do. When they get this is what the numbers do. And I just, and all of a sudden, and it just made, and nowadays, I can look at a set of numbers and just say, hey, this is what's going on with you. And people are like, I didn't even mention my right shoulder bothered me. How do you know that? I'm like, because that's where your body's drawing energy from. They're like, it's been bothering me for about 6 months. What do I do? I'm like, we move your chemistry to your core and the energy stops drawing from there and the pain just goes away. It's exactly what happens.
It's beautifully said and so articulate and well illustrated. Now that we've solved that multi-lifetime riddle, let's talk about this wonderful product that I just got from you. It just arrived in the mail yesterday. Right here, you can see it for our viewers if you're watching on YouTube. Talk to us about what this product is, what's the name of it, what's it for, and how you developed it.
Vitellometry, okay?
Yes.
It's based upon telomeres. So what happened was in about 2014, I heard about the 2009 Nobel Prize in Medicine and 3 physiologists. One of them was Elizabeth Blackburn. I can't remember the other 2, but Elizabeth Blackburn wrote a book, and so that's why I remember her name, right? And but what they did is they found telomeres have been studied for years, and they're associated with how our cells turn over. They're located at the end of our chromosomes, within our DNA, and as telomeres shorten, bottom line, we age, period.
Yes.
And they knew this, but in 2009, these 3 physiologists figured out if we stimulate an enzyme called telomerase, enzymes make things happen, the telomerase prevents the telomeres from shortening, and basically you actually reverse age. So they had these mice that were prematurely aged to be like in their 90s. Their hair was white. They were arthritic. They were cataracts. They had kidney failure. They were demented. They couldn't make it through mazes. They stimulated this telomerase activity. Their hair got dark. Their arthritis went away. Their kidney failure returned. Their brains grew 25%.
25%. Boy, we should be delivering this to all our politicians right now.
Oh my God!
In IV delivery systems.
You want to talk politics? I'll talk to you politics in a minute about it. But so anyway, I learned about this. So what did I do? Well, I didn't have to go to the library and get out mesh terms. You got Google now. So I Googled telomerase activity. How to stimulate it? Pulled up about 200 medical abstracts and just printed off like 100 pages of medical abstracts on telomerase. And I started looking through them and I started noticing all these natural products: ginkgo, milk thistle, cynomorium, resveratrol, and green tea, and elderberry and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, the way that you naturally stimulate this enzyme is all natural products. They don't know how to stimulate it with anything that's not natural, really, right? But they do show that crappy lifestyles and trauma. If you had childhood trauma that you repeatedly run through your head and you've got bad cycles and you haven't learned how to deal with your trauma and stuff like that, you're shortening your telomeres and you're shortening your life. If you have chronic stress patterns, you're shortening your telomeres and you're shortening your life. If you live on saturated fats and crappy foods, you're shortening your telomeres and you're shortening your life. They show that some basic vitamins and minerals increase your telomere length. So I started looking like, okay, are there products out there that stimulate telomerase activity? And you'll find one called TA65 that has cycloestragonol and astragalus 4 in it in high quantities, that if you really buy the dose that they want, you're paying a couple $1,000 a month in order to take the dose that they would suggest for telomere activity. Okay. So I turned around and I looked up and found all these herbs. And then what came to mind? Compounding pharmacy, naturopathic medicine. And then I looked at the herbs from an eclectic standpoint. So ginkgo, all of them have telomerase activity. And I incorporated that bioelectric chemistry concept. So ginkgo has telomerase activity, but what does it do? Improve circulation to the brain, right? So brains increase 25%. Let's get more blood flow there and have telomerase activity. Milk thistle, your powerhouse. Your liver is literally a nuclear generator inside of you. And milk thistle has telomerase activity while protecting the liver, right? Astragalus. Astragalus has gone back for thousands of years for immune enhancing activity, for adrenal support, adaptogenic, antimicrobial, all these wonderful benefits. But astragalus, one of the primary plants for telomerase activity, but also that's where those extracts of cycloestragonol and astragalus 4, which I also put in this product, but low amounts, because I believe in the concepts of synergy. 1 + 1 = 10. You don't need the high amounts. You just need them to be there and get them to be utilized more effectively. So astragalus. Purslane. What is purslane? That weed that you're pulling out of your yard, or hopefully that weed that you're putting out of your yard and throwing in your salads, because it's the richest source of omega-3 fatty acids. What do omega-3 fatty acids do? That's what your brain is. That's what all of your cell membranes. So not only did purslane have telomerase activity, but let's improve the fluidity of our cell membranes so nutrients can move across the cell membranes and have a better exchange, right? Green tea extract, telomerase activity, but also massive amounts of ellagic acids and polyphenol activity. So what? Antioxidant. Again, more telomerase, anti-aging, protective of the cells, immune enhancing, anti-cancer, all those benefits. Elderberry contains resveratrol, again, antioxidant, circulation, immune boosting, again, with telomerase activity. And then I took in that bioelectric concept, added calcium phosphate, because when I told you break down the minerals, Calcium phosphate makes up about 84% of your body because it's the primary constituent of your bones. So most people who are acidic and they're buffering the acids in their body, that's why they develop osteoporosis, because they just keep pulling from their bones. I put a little bit of calcium in there because calcium regulates the minerals of all other minerals' ability to move across your cell membranes. And it's the primary nutrient that the liver needs in order to process and generate energy. And then I put lemon. Now, lemon is unique, and I could talk about lemon for another hour, but lemon is out of all foods known to mankind, it's the only one that's 100% anionic. I mentioned things are anionic or cationic in nature. Cationic causes clumping, anions disperse. That classic commercial, Dawn takes grease out of your way, 1 drop of soap and that grease went, okay? Lemons will disperse, but they also, you have vitamin C, antioxidant activity, you have antimicrobial activity, and things like that. So I started making these capsules, and I'd take them myself, and I'd be like, oh my God, do I really feel this good? So I'd ask some clients, you want to take some capsules? They're like, what are you asking me to be a guinea pig? I'm like, well, I'll give you some. 100% of the people I gave them to, like, can I have more?
I love it.
They were like, please, can I get more of these? So I started in 2015. Okay, how are we going to market it? What are we going to call it? Vitelometry for telomeres. We've got trademarked the name. We started creating a website, and then I had to come up with cash flow. And it was funny how the cash flow fell into place to what I needed to order the very first amount. And it's just been a blessing. We have had people have their sex drive come back in their 70s. We've had people say that I'm climbing mountains better than I ever had. We've had people say that my mental focus and my ability to get through my day is just incredible. I don't need the caffeine all day, And so when I formulated them, I was formulating them so that you could take up to 12 a day to like, hey, this is going to compete with TA65, and 12 a day, you'll get these high amounts of the cycloastragalus. And what I found is people don't need that much. At the most, I've had people take 6 to 8, but in general, 4 a day. And so
4 a day. You take them in the mornings, you take them in the evenings, and
I take them in the morning, either 2 in the morning and 2 at lunch, or all 4 of them in the morning. I get up in the morning and just pop 4 right when I wake up. And if I'm having a day where I got lack of sleep, I might take 2 or 3 more in the afternoon.
Do you take them with food or just with water?
Doesn't matter. I actually recommend that you take them with distilled water with a little bit of lemon squeezed in it, because lemon's going to disperse. So that's the ideal way, is having that lemon to stimulate the bile, because what you're doing, the digestive tract, the whole purpose is to solubilize things so it gets absorbed into the blood to go to the liver. And then if you have that fresh squeezed lemon in there, that's going to act like a bile. It's going to stimulate that it's going to normalize the pH, stimulate that liver to improve the liver's ability to take that and send it where it needs to be.
Super cool. I'm so pumped. I'm actually going to start. I'm going to start these things. Monday is my new start day for when I start.
You're going to love them.
I'll do it for the whole duration, and I'll let you know how it goes. I'm super, super excited. There's 120 caps in this, and that it's literally a 30-day supply.
Right.
Of course, you never know with me. If I like it, I might decide to turn up the juice a little bit more. I'm sure
a few more. I do. Sometimes I'll take about 8 of them. What we're doing is, because I thank you for having me on, but anybody who mentions, what we do is, if they go to the website, I got a couple websites. One is Doc Misak, DocMisak.com. Doc Misak. You can find my articles. You can find links to my YouTube show. You can find other podcasts, and you can find a link to Vitelometry. The company is there. Or you can go to Vitelometry. People just don't remember how to spell it, but it's Vitelemotry, right? Vitelometry.com. But if they're there and they go to purchase it and they use Bioptimizers 10, they'll get 10% off. And that way we know that they watched the show, they heard about it, and then we can give them 10% off for trying it.
I love that. Now, before we go, I believe you mentioned that you are working on a book, or you have a book that you are distilling this incredible wealth of information. I love the passion. I love the enthusiasm. I love the clarity in what you are communicating. I think it's world-class. Can you talk a little bit about that, where that's going, and then maybe some...
The book is finished, and what we've done is I've got this wonderful person that I do my my YouTube shows with, and she does graphic design. So I sit there and I'm like, okay, we need something that summarizes this. And then she takes all these things and conceptually it puts it into a picture. And so what we were waiting to do is finish these illustrations that explain the concepts visually, because people are like, just reading words doesn't mean a lot to many people anymore. So we've got the concepts explained in the book with the basics of pictures of how to get started and how to do these things. But I got the book finished. Right now, all we're doing is getting a format together to find the right publisher, a publisher who's going to turn around and say, you know what, this is something that people need to be aware of. And what it's going to be called is Health Restoration by the Numbers.
Oh, I love it.
Okay. And so, and it gives a series of numbers on the front and says, hey, this pattern's associated with adrenal stress. This pattern's associated with brain tumors. This pattern's associated with whatever, and it doesn't teach everything in the book about the numbers, but what it does is it helps people to understand this quantum concepts that I've been talking to you about, and all these practitioners that went before me that were geniuses that said, look, this is all quantum energy. This is why Blavatsky did this. This is why Royal Rife did this. This is why Reinhard Voll did this. We're measuring, we're analyzing, and we're showing you cause and effect of how you interact with this world. And this simple urine test is a way that you can learn to know how efficient you're being. Because when you're generating more energy than you're consuming, you're going to watch your body start restoring. Simple as that.
That might be one of the greatest summaries of how to overcome health challenges and to live a really vital lifestyle. I see that you have one of my favorite quotes from Thomas Edison above your desk, which I love. It's a beautiful quote. And I actually put that quote in one of my books that I wrote years ago. And I think it's great. I think if Edison were here today, he'd be very proud of what you are doing and how you're initiating. Before we go, we'll go a little bit. We're going to go, since I know you're not afraid of, it's obvious you're not afraid of going into the deep waters, I think, or the more controversial. What's your opinion on the current situation that we are in? We have to be mindful of how we say things these days, and what they're advocating in regards to governments are advocating, medical doctors are advocating about people getting the shots and all this sort of stuff. How do you feel about all this sort of thing? I'll just be clear. I'm horrified by what's going. I think not only is it very poor science, I think the fact that the public control and shutting off of dissenting voices is usually indicative of something that's not good. History, I'm a buff of history. Right. When you don't have dissent and you don't have discussion and you're forcing people into one version on a very limited timeline, that's usually a deep cause for concern if you study anything about history in any subject in any area. Any thoughts about how to stay healthy during this current crisis?
Well, number one, keep your immune system enhanced.
Bingo.
Okay. The Astragalus, the green tea, the things that are in there. I have yet to have a single client who's come to me who was taking my product that said that they developed COVID. Number two, I have to stay out of the politics because YouTube censorship and whatever, you just got to stay away. I can just tell you that I will never do those shots, because what you're doing is you are programming your cells, which have an innate response, and you have this innate, your immune system is governed to say, hey, I can take on anything, maybe not do the best job, but if it comes in here and it's not supposed to be in here, I will attack it. Whereas what you're doing is you're giving a shot that's programming your cells that says you're going to attack this and
nothing else.
And that cell is going to become a bully to where your natural protective is going to say, well, I'm here, but that guy's pushing me out of the way. And so I'm scared of what we're going to see in 12 to 18 months after all these people have had these shots. Their body has responded, because if you look at the small animal studies with these shots, animals die. You look at the monkeys who got these shots, they develop chronic health issues because of they weren't able to heal anymore. And then they start injecting humans. And so the science is not solid for me. And this is not a vaccine. Okay.
Correct.
So
that's
when
what
you're
people
turning
don't
around
understand. The
and
vaccine
they're getting processed,
yeah.
they're getting protected under the Vaccine
Yes.
Act, where they're using a biological modifier as a drug to modify your immune response. That is human experimentation. I'm leaving it at that, and I am not saying anymore.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think even as a responsible individual who's using critical analysis, we'd say it's, it behooves anyone to think that we could possibly create something so rapidly and so effective with so little trials on long-term effects of anything. It doesn't make rational or logical sense if you understand biology or the development of anything. And so these things take years just for the smallest integration of anything, let alone something as sophisticated as immune system response. For our listeners who are concerned about this and need to arm themselves, this is very difficult in the social programming. I would refer them to, there is a great podcast with Brett Weinstein on Dark Horse and Gert Vanderbosch. And it's really interesting about, it's not emotionalized, it's not sensationalized, it's not politicized. It's about
science.
It's about science and coming to a conclusion. And both of them share the same concern that you have, the same concern that I have, is that we could be really creating a bigger problem than we imagine by this mitigation and this radical social experiment. However, I will say this on a positive note to finish this up for everyone. Life exists despite all the unusual circumstances that has. We're floating on this little blue ball somewhere in the end of the universe. And I do not believe that regardless of the bad intentions of some misinformed people, that life will not continue to exist.
Right.
What one needs to do is to follow exactly what Mr. Edison said and what you're advocating, and that is to bolster up the immune system, the energy systems of the body, and allow it to do what it does.
Exactly.
And that will support your life, will give you the courage to move forward in life and live life, as opposed to shut down and condense your life away from it. Dr. Misak, this is one of the best interviews we've had here. I think you're a great source of information. I can't wait to get you back into the show. Please keep us posted about when the book comes out. I want to get you back on the podcast so that we can kind of break into the book and promote the book with our audience. I think you're doing a great service in the world. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, and any, can you just one last time, could you share where people can find you, where they can connect with you, social media, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so the easiest way is docmisak.com, DOCMISAK.com. Again, vitalometry.com is the company. I do Pittsburgh Alternative Health, and my YouTube channel is Doc Misak, DOCMISAK, but you have to type it all the way out, because when you go to search, it will not populate. My name, you can type out Doc MISA, and I will not populate. They do not let you know that my show is on there. And I've even had people who are following my show and they don't even get notifications. I go on every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I pushed it back to 10 so you West Coasters can get up in the morning and watch with me. But 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday morning. I come on and I spend an hour just kind of giving people understanding of what's going on with this stuff.
Love it. This has been awesome. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to start trying your product. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Awesome Health Podcast. And for all our listeners, I think you're probably excited and delighted. Give Dr. Misak's product a shot. Tune into his regular broadcast as he's issued. And we want to share with you. Thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. I'm Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers. Take care and fight the good fight. You have the ability to overcome just about anything.
At Bioptimizers, our mission is to fix digestion, and a cornerstone of digestion is gut flora. P3OM is our patented probiotic formula. In fact, we call it the Navy SEALs of probiotics. You see, strong proteolytic or protein digesting activity is paramount to having a healthy gut flora. And of course, P3OM provides that. The good news is, unlike weaker probiotics, P3OM survives the digestion process. What it does is it basically multiplies the good guys while protecting you against pathogens, or what some people call the bad guys. P3OM really helps to rebuild your digestion. And what that allows you to do is to maximize nutrient uptake, energy, and metabolism. To find out more of how P3OM can help you, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.